Sarah Wilson.
I'm Skylar Sorrow. Chandler Washburn.
I'm Benji Headley.
And for our experiment, we tested productivity of ant tunneling behavior at varying temperatures in Solenopsis invicta. So we chose to look at ant tunneling because we just thought it was so awesome how these small insects can create such vast, complex things such as tunnels. So here we have a mold of ant tunnel. So they poured something in and you can see how complex these networks are. And ant tunneling behavior evolved as a defense mechanism, so it protects them against predators, weather, and temperature. And along with that, they normally will build little mounds on top of the network of tunnels for further protection. So there are various different factors that can influence ant tunneling behavior, such as soil composition, colony size, light intensity, and temperature. So we decided to look at temperature's effect on the tunneling behavior because over the past century, the Earth's temperature has been steadily rising. So we want to see if this continues, the effect it'll have on this species. So our species is Solenopsis invicta, commonly known as the red fire ant, everyone's favorite ant to hang out with. They are found in a multitude of places, and we chose these ants because they are known for their large networks of tunnels, and also they are local to South Carolina, so they were easy for us to gather. These ants are very damaging to roads and infrastructures and equipment. So this is equipment. And these ants are really attracted to electricity, so they'll build their nests and tunnels inside of the equipment, and this causes damage to the electrical circuits and also can cause rusting. Also, these ants like to build their tunnels under roads and infrastructures, and the tunneling causes the soil to weaken and can cause them to cave in and collapse. So, without all that being said, our species is invasive in our area, but they are native to Central South America. But since the mid to early 1900s, they have been transported to various places, including southern United States and densely populated in our area. So our main question was, what is temperature's effect on ant tunneling behavior? We hypothesized that ants' tunnel length will vary at different temperatures, and we predicted that at higher temperatures, S. invicta will tunnel less, leading to smaller average tunneling lengths.
Okay, so there were basically two phases to our experiment. The first was the acclimation phase, and then the second was the actual experimental phase. So during the acclimation phase, they were housed in these plastic containers, and they were fed a slice of apple and sprayed with water daily. And the dirt that is in that container is from their natural habitat, and we collected all of our ants from Wofford's campus. And once we entered the experimental phase, they were transferred over into these glass ant farm containers that you can see right there. And during this period, they were not fed, but they were sprayed with water daily. And the temperatures were maintained through use of different incubators, set to different temperatures, their respective temperatures. And so, like I said, the acclimation period is something that we took into account because of a concept known as thermal heat tolerance. And this just basically refers to the amount that a temperature can increase over time before an individual's biological functions become disrupted. And so we wanted to take that into account because we looked at different studies and they saw that if they pushed the ants past their thermal heat tolerance limit, that their foraging behavior decreased. And so in order to take this into account and not put them at too high of a temperature too soon, we started all of the ants off in these housing containers and placed them at 30 degrees Celsius for 1 week so that they all started at the same baseline. And then after that 1 week period, one of the containers, the ants were transferred over into the experimental containers and left to tunnel at 30 degrees Celsius for another week. And then the remaining two housing containers were moved up to 35 degrees Celsius. And then the same process happened. So after a week of acclimating at 35 degrees Celsius, one of the containers, the ants were transferred into their experimental container and left to tunnel at 35 degrees Celsius for a week. And the last container was moved up to 40 degrees Celsius. And they stayed there for a week before entering the experimental phase. And so this way we increased by increments of 5 degrees Celsius. and made sure that everybody started out at the same baseline so that we didn't push them past that limit that I was talking about. And at the end of each week, we took pictures of the final product of the tunneling. So for data analysis, we use this software program called MTJ, and with this software program, we can upload photos onto the software program, and we can evaluate the tunnel length and area of the environment for each photo, or for each group. And so we have some pictures of our results. And so we use this program, or this tool called RO Manager, which allowed us to track distances for individual distances and create a total tunnel length distance. So the top picture is kind of a zoomed in of this picture at the top, you can see. So with 30 degrees Celsius, as you can see here, that a lot of the tunnels were at the top of the surface and they did not increase in depth. Yeah. So with 35 degrees Celsius, we saw lots of tunnel performances, or tunnel performance, yes. And they went all the way down to the bottom of the container, and they went all different sorts of directions. And with 40 degrees, we found that they were kind of similar to the 30 degrees Celsius ants, that there was not a lot of tunnel shown, and they're all at the top of the surface. So with each group, we created a relative value. So we did the total tunnel distance over the total area, and in this way, it allowed us to look at just the tunnel length, eliminating the variable of there's an inconsistent amount of soil in each container. So as you can see here from the relative value in the temperature groups, we found that through statistical tests that temperature did have significance on ant tunneling behavior, and also we found that ants that tunneled at 35 degrees Celsius tunneled significantly more than they tunneled at 30 and 40 degrees Celsius. However, we did find that ants that tunneled at 30 and 40 degrees Celsius, there was no significant difference between their tunnel performances.
All right, so our hypothesis was supported because we did see an influence on temperature on ant tunneling behavior, but unfortunately, the prediction was not supported because 35 is where we saw the most tunneling behavior as compared to the 30 degrees Celsius tank. And that got us wondering, why is this temperature increase influencing this ant's ability to tunnel more? So we kind of speculated as to the reasoning behind this. And what we came up to after with some research was the metabolic rate. So temperature has an influence on metabolic rate. And as you can see here through the graph, this isn't exactly our species, it's an oceanic species, but it's the same kind of idea. Metabolic rate's going to increase as temperature increases. So we kind of speculated that the increase in temperature in the 35 degrees Celsius tank influenced the metabolic rate of these ants to increase. And since the metabolic rate was increasing, their energy supply was increasing, which gave them more energy to tunnel. Furthermore, we looked at 40 degrees Celsius. So if temperature was increasing, why wouldn't it keep increasing? Or why would tunnel distance keep increasing as temperature increased? And the phenomenon of increased metabolic rate has a cap. So once temperature increased to this certain degree, it kind of let off. And that's because of these heat shock proteins. So everyone has heat shock proteins. They're in ants, they're in humans, everyone. And the body outputs these more as temperature becomes more of a stressor. So since this high degree of temperature was stressing these ants out more, they develop more of these heat shock proteins. But honestly, these are energetically costly to make. So they have less energy to tunnel, therefore. So in kind of the broad spectrum of things, why is ant tunneling behavior important? And also, our ant was an invasive species. So why is it important? Since our ant, it wasn't an invasive species, but it's also very similar to a lot of other species found in South Carolina. And those species have these secondary benefits of increasing seed dispersal and aerating the soil, which really helps in agricultural practices. So the effect of global climate change, if it isn't reduced or slowed down to some degree, we might be losing some of these secondary benefits that we see in ants. In terms of future studies, our experiment had a 1-week acclimation period, and we thought that was a little bit short. Throwing these ants into a pretty high temperature increase over a week span to adjust to it is a lot. So in our future studies, to help ants kind of facilitate to the new environment, we'd like to increase the acclimation period. We'd like to thank Dr. Cantwell and the biology department for allowing us to conduct this study and helping us along the way. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for this group?
I might have missed this because I had to make a pit stop. But how did you collect those ants? You said you got them from Wofford. What did you do?
Originally, what happened was that's a long story. The biology department purchased probably like $100 worth of ants for us, and there were some problems in our experiment. The glue that we used to make our containers expanded in the incubators, and the ant containers literally popped open, and ants were everywhere in the incubator. We were kind of freaking out about it because our experiments, they're like ruined pretty much. So we had to think on our feet, and we collected some outside of the beach volleyball court in phase 3 and kind of supplemented it. So that's how we did it.
Kind of dug them and put them in a box and carried them back.
Very creative.
Yes. Kelly?
I might have missed this too, but what, like, this is just out of curiosity. Why do these ants like electricity?
Actually, we did some research about that, and not necessarily electricity itself, but when an ant somehow stumbles over, electrical wire and it gets fried, it releases pheromones in the environment, like help signals, and other ants sense that and they come to help, and more of them get fried essentially. So it's just an ongoing thing.
So it's not that they like it; they're just like.
It's
Attracted to
more or less by chance, yeah, but.
Yes, ma'am.
I have another curious question. Is there a correlation between the mounds and the tunnels during the summertime? Because I noticed, I see in our front yard, usually, see lots of ant mounds. And this time of year, you hardly see any. So, and I noticed in the summertime it's warmer than 40 degrees. So, have you come across anything like that?
Well, my assumption is maybe in the wintertime, I don't really know, I'm just making assumptions right now, they aren't as active, and so during the summer they're really active, putting dirt, building their tunnels, but during the winter they maybe burrow under and kind of stay under, so the mounds get pushed down.
Yeah, one study found that as temperature increases, just like in a natural environment, that there's more activity towards the top of the mound. So that's why maybe you see the ant hills in your yard bigger, because they're spending more time at the top, versus in the winter when it's cold, they're tunneling down to get away from that. They're not as productive.
So are the mounds, are they related to the tunnel activity below ground unit?
They build tunnels within the mounds.
Okay.
We didn't do a
Yeah,
lot
the
of
mounts like the top of the tunnel. So yeah, there would be performances like there. Yes, I would say.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, great.